Welcome to Living Under New Mexico Skies, a podcast brought to you by Parnall Law. You know, CJ Rodden lives the life, man, working in the motorcycle space without having to turn a wrench or close a sale. CJ's had a varied and successful past, but found a niche working for a national network of law firms specializing in representing motorcycle accident victims. Luckily for us, CJ is now the Director of Marketing Relations for Parnall Law in New Mexico, where he's developed and nurtured the firm's presence in the New Mexico motorcycle scene. Okay, let's get this episode rolling. Hey, CJ, welcome to Living Under New Mexico Skies, man. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we always start with this question, man. Tell us something about yourself. What's something that you want people to know about CJ?
Oh, maybe I don't want them to know anything about CJ.
Well put.
Yeah, I don't know. Just that I'm, pretty straightforward, hard worker, loves motorcycles. Pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get into the motorcycle because I think that's a huge part of our discussion today because I think there's some really important stuff for us to kind of mine out of there. Yeah. So you're the Director of Marketing, Relations, I guess you could say, in the state of New Mexico. And you cover a pretty broad, this is a pretty good big state.
Yeah.
What's that all about? What does that entail? What's your job or your gig?
I mean, when I first started, it took a little while for Bert to kind of cook up that title, Director of Marketing Relations. He was trying to find a way to sort of, accurately describe the work that I'm doing. It's essentially grassroots marketing.
Yeah.
But, when I started, I had a long history of relationships with all the motorcycle shops in New Mexico, both dealers and independents. And, I brought all those relationships with me. And I already had some other peripheral relationships in the car community and some of those other areas, and even in the fitness community. And so basically my job is to really manage our community outreach, all of our events and activities that we do outside the shop. So over the time that I've been here, we've gone from just before I started, I think we were doing maybe 3 or 4 events a year, and it'd be like these little indoor conventions like for the chiropractors or the district attorneys or somebody like that. And last year we sponsored over 150 events. We attended about 90. And that's in part because I attend many. And then also Malcolm on our team has been a really valuable asset for me, helping attend a lot of events. And it just helps us be out in the community, talk to people kind of where they are, what they're doing, And so with motorcycles and car people, like they have their little niche of what they like to do. I like to kind of meet them there. Yeah.
Well, your reputation in the motorcycle world, that's something that when I was doing my research, I discovered. And I think that's something I really want to ask you about. So maybe a simple question, or obvious question, but avid motorcyclist.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. So, I started riding when I was like 11. My father bought me a clapped out piece of junk, 80cc Japanese little bike, and I don't even know what brand it was. Like, I see the pictures now, and it's like rattle can red, and
nice.
This is Philadelphia in the early 80s, right? Luckily, he had a buddy who had some property outside of town and was able to take me out and teach me how to ride around in the little fields or whatever.
Yeah, that's great.
And then when I moved to New Mexico, it really kind of opened up a whole new world because it's such open space out here. And so I got an old Honda from the early 70s, and I was 14 years old and riding it to school. I had a motorcycle license. So it was a good time. And then, they kind of evolved from there. In my late teens, early 20s, I was all about sport bikes and going fast and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was my next question, man. So you're starting to ride, and you've kind of answered a lot of this, but dirt or street? I mean, what was your passion? Or both?
Yeah, well,
was it both?
I think at the beginning I was trying to sort it out.
Yeah.
And so I did a little bit of dirt. I wasn't very good at it, and that is maybe what kind of reinforced that I should do more on the street.
Right.
But also in the 80s, all of these cool bikes were coming out, and so I had a 250 Honda Rebel when I was 15 years old. It was like the coolest.
That brings back memories.
I mean, obviously you're 15, you can't afford a Harley,
Yeah.
but a $1,500 Honda, you know, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And then a few years later, I had a Hurricane 600, and it was like the sport bike of the day.
Yes.
You know? And so, you know, I rode that thing all over the place.
So I have to ask, you've been riding a long time, so you were involved in a lot of that evolution. I saw it. I'm not a motorcycle. I had an old SL 125 on the farm.
That's what I had,
And blue and white, can still see it. And
yeah, mine was green and white.
Yeah, that was my baby. I did not have a license, however, so I would sneak into town on it. So adventure bikes, I mean, is that something you're into now? Because I know those are becoming bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I first became aware of adventure bikes maybe like almost 25 years ago.
Got it.
And as an official segment of riding, I think that's about the time it started to take off. I mean, BMW is generally credited with inventing the genre, right? With the GS.
Yeah.
Well, in 2003, you know, everybody watched Long Way Around. Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman, they ride their motorcycles around the world.
I even watched it. I'm not a motorcyclist.
No, but we're watching it. And we're like, these guys are crazy. Like this is a huge bike. They're driving on like no road.
Mongolia. Mongolia. Thank you.
And so, so that was my first exposure to them. But then I didn't get one at that time. I still had kind of a sporty bike.
Okay.
And then, you know, later I ended up with something that people called a sport, rather they called it an adventure bike, but I thought it was more of a sport touring bike, and I did more road touring with it. But what I have now is more of a true adventure bike.
Well, that was my next question, man. I'm a huge bicyclist, so I have a quiver. What have you got in your quiver? What's in the garage?
Yeah, it's a little bit lean at the moment. I only have 4. So
I was asked to comb my herd, so I know where you're going.
I have a 2003 Buell Firebolt, which is pretty sporty, but it's an American sport bike.
Ride the dragon now.
Yeah, and I have. I have my adventure bike is a 2016 Yamaha Super Tenere 1200 cc.
Nice.
So you know, it's a big adventure bike.
Yeah.
And then I also have a vintage 1989 Honda CBR 600F. So it's similar to my Hurricane I had when I was young. It's a first generation.
Yeah, those are great.
And then I recently upgraded my dirt bike. I got a KTM 500. So you know, it's a bigger dirt bike. You could lightweight adventure bike it. It's street legal. Yeah. So, I like to go do a lot of single track and that kind of thing.
Yeah, a buddy of mine up in Santa Fe, Henry, big, has 2 of those. And he actually had a Mako Shark at one point.
Oh, those are fun.
Yeah, I remember, though, the work he did, so you've probably ridden some of the stuff. I don't know how he scored this, but he got to do the Via Caldera, the routing, and he's done the Hemes. So
yeah, he used to be able to do more in the Caldera before they made it into a national monument a couple years ago. But you know, this is the beauty of New Mexico is there's great riding everywhere.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. How active, or you know, what is the motorcycle scene in New Mexico? And help me here understand that dirt versus road.
Yeah,
or, you know, kind of.
So I mean, that's sort of how it's multifaceted, right?
Right.
So on the one end, you might have, you know, Harley street bikes, big touring bikes or cruisers.
Yep.
I think of that as kind of like the black leather jacket scene, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those guys are cool, and they have their runs they like to do, and some of them chew a lot of miles. I know a lot of guys that put a lot of miles on their bikes.
Yeah.
Right? And then, you know, somewhere in the middle, you have guys who are maybe the one bike guy, right? They need the Swiss Army knife of bikes.
Yeah,
they need the one that suits their scene, right?
Yep.
And so those are the kind of guys we saw like last month when we did the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride.
Right.
And so, you know, you got a lot of Triumphs and a lot of sort of middle of the road type of Japanese bikes, not super sporty.
And I know the Enfield's coming back.
Correct.
And it's not the one that my father-in-law knew who was English. It's the new gen.
Right. Yeah. So they're in India now.
Yeah, right.
And the beauty of that is it's a well-priced machine.
Right.
They're surprisingly well made. I mean, we like to kind of poo-poo some of these import bikes, but you know, India has gotten better and better, and so that kind of scene is really good. And then further down, you get kind of the crossover crowd, the adventure / dual sport crowd that does dirt and street.
Yeah.
And then you go all the way over and you have dirt, which is enduro, which is more like cross country type of riding, versus motocross, which is like
and I'll see those in usually on a trailer or back bed of a truck, because a lot of these guys. Look, you could do it, but that ain't a pleasant ride on asphalt with those tires.
You can do it.
Yeah.
It is relatively unpleasant.
Yeah, so I always see those guys when I'm going out to mountain bike, they're heading out basically east, out toward Edgewood. I know there's some
I mean,
routes out there.
For those of us here in Albuquerque, we would go to like Cedro Peak and Harris and ride some of the gnarly trees and rocks over there. The west side of Rio Rancho is very popular.
Very cool.
I ride kind of on the north end over there, the Rainbow area.
Yeah, I'm
Santa
familiar
Fe,
with
the
that.
Caja del Rio is very popular.
I've mountain biked there. So.
And we're in the middle of a big fight with that, as a matter of fact, because Senator Heinrich introduced a bill to try to change the designation at the Caja del Rio.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to limit motorized vehicles out there. So it's going to limit, dirt bikes and other users.
And dude, that's one of the places to go. See, here's my problem with this is when you have BLM land and where you can, but then you've got this beautiful place here. The Caja del Rio is amazing.
Yeah, and right now BLM manages Caja del Rio.
I know.
And it's a great area. There's really, I mean, literally, I've been all over that place. I've ridden all those trails. There's nothing wrong with it.
No.
So I don't really know why they want to limit it. I think it's really not the right move.
Yeah, I hear you. So, all right, I'm going to assume, and here you can answer this for me. You're the motorcyclist. I'm a mountain biker, and I'm not a roadie. I tell people, but I commute and I ride on a road bike. I don't see a lot of danger and accidents when I'm on my mountain bike. I'm usually away from people. There's no cars. I'm up in the mountains. What do you think, man? What are the threats or the fears to the people who ride on the streets of Albuquerque and the roads of New Mexico?
Yeah, I mean, similar to your mountain bike experience, dirt riders really don't have too many of these encounters, right?
Self-inflicted wounds.
And I've done that, yeah. But the street bike riders are relatively vulnerable.
Right.
And it's interesting, first of all, look, if you've lived here long enough, you're going to understand. New Mexico has some of the worst drivers in the United States. And I've lived in many states. I've worked and lived and driven, and I've ridden my motorcycle in all the landlocked states anyway, not Hawaii. But the problem is that most car drivers are operating that car as a secondary function of whatever they're trying to do, right? They're on their phone, they're yelling at their kids, they're thinking or paying attention to something else, and by the way, I'm motoring down the road. Yeah. And for the motorcycle rider, they don't have the same sort of protection around them that a car does, and so they have that vulnerability. And so a moment's inattention by a car driver could be very catastrophic for a motorcyclist. Agreed. And we see it all the time. Yeah. So the risk is that if you're going to ride motorcycles, you have to really have your head on straight, wear your protective equipment, be in the right mind space. Yeah. And, I like to say it's not the years you've been riding, it's the miles, right? It's the seat time, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Because if you ride 900 miles a year for 10 years, that's 9,000 miles. But if I ride 900 miles a month or a week, it's way more seat time. I'm going to see and understand and have more intuition.
Or you ride, like so many friends of mine from the Midwest go to Alaska. They've all done that journey. You've done it. You've done it. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, you learn. So intersections, I know one of the big distracted driving, yes, without a doubt, but intersections are so bad.
Yeah, the number one cause of motorcycle crashes is left turns. Either the car is turning left in front of the motorcycle, and sometimes it happens when the motorcycle is turning left. Right. I mean, we have this epidemic in New Mexico of people running red lights, running stop signs, and everybody thinks, I'm going to beat this light. But man, that thing's been red for like 2 seconds already, and you're just bombing through there.
When we moved to New Mexico 30 years ago, our realtor said, don't ever be the first or the last in the intersection.
And that is the best advice.
In New Mexico.
Yeah, that is the best advice.
So, okay, all right, so God forbid, but let's say we're talking to some of our guys who ride on the street, and it could be you. I'm not biking on the street on a motorcycle anymore, but question is, what do you do, man? You go down. And let's say you're not unconscious, you're still there, you got your helmet, but you're laying there on the street. What happens? I mean, medical is probably being called.
Yeah. So honestly, my advice, and this has happened to me, I've been in motorcycle crashes on the street, okay?
Got it.
My advice really is don't try to be that tough person who, I'm so resilient, I'm going to bounce up and I'm good to go. No, I'm fine. Don't touch me. I'm going to walk it off or anything. The problem with that idea is that you don't actually have a true assessment of where you might be injured, because you're instantly in shock, right? Your body is doing all these maneuvers to try to mitigate what's going on.
Yeah, your adrenaline's going.
Your adrenaline dump.
Yeah.
So you're not really aware that, like, oh, by the way, like my foot's on crooked or who knows what, right? And so I tell everybody, like, take the full ride, right? If you're hurt, you're wiped out, you're laying in the road, I mean, one, hopefully it's not too hot down there on the road because it's summertime here, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, let the ambulance come. Let those guys check you out. Take the ride, tell them what's up. And, I mean, don't just try to walk it off and minimize it.
See, that's good advice for me. I tell people I've been hit on my bikes in New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, and finally Albuquerque. And I was that guy who said it's my fault or something's wrong. I'm going to pick up my garbage, my stuff. And I was always worried about my bike. I'm like, oh, my God, what happened? And then I would drag it off and assume everything was okay. So that's great advice. Especially it's different with motorcycle. It's heavier. It's bigger. You're going faster. There's a lot of factors. So.
Yeah. I mean, I like to say, look, in the 45+ years I've been riding motorcycles, cars have changed dramatically, right? In that time, cars have gotten anti-lock brakes, traction control, crumple zones, airbags. They have the quiet cabins. The car, in some cases, actually does drive itself, right?
Yeah.
And so you could have a relatively serious car crash and not be injured.
Right.
But you could have a relatively minor motorcycle crash and be seriously injured. Right?
You're dealing with asphalt. You're going down.
Yeah.
So, yeah. A friend of mine, Big Roadie, who years ago he said to me, he goes, "You ain't going to win a fight with a car."
Right.
And momentum, mass, all of that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, the physics is such a thing.
All right. So here's what happens now. I learned something. I want to ask you about this. So when I was hit, finally, I ran into someone who said, "Hey, if you got car insurance, you know where I'm going with this."
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little about UM. What is because I had no idea. And so many times you just don't know. You can get hit out in the middle of nowhere in a hit and run, and that person's gone.
Right.
If they hit you and they just don't care, it happens. So
right.
Tell us about UM. I mean, what is the advantage, or what's for someone on a motorcycle that?
Yeah, so just a quick overview of insurance.
Right.
So the state mandates that everybody operating a vehicle on the road has to have liability coverage.
Yes.
That's the coverage that protects other people from you.
Right.
Right? If you hit them, it's your fault. That's the insurance that covers them. One problem with that is those laws were developed in the mid-'80s, and the limits are $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident.
Not much.
And in 1985, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But in 2026, it's dropping the bucket.
40 years later.
Add to that this idea that people think they have full coverage. That's a misnomer. There's technically no such thing.
Yeah.
But you can add on other
Okay.
little, what do they call them, riders or whatever.
Right.
So you can get comprehensive, which covers, if your bike is stolen or damaged, right? You can get collision, which if you're in a crash, it would pay more for your property damage.
Right.
And uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage is the real one that you really want to get. This is the one that protects you from other people. Okay. And so what people often don't realize is that it's like a backpack. I mean, you take it with you, right?
Yeah.
And so it's portable. And so in New Mexico, and I need to double check because there was a couple of changes recently in this, but it had been portable and stackable.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, I've got multiple cars and multiple motorcycles on my insurance policy. I have uninsured motorist coverage on all of them.
Backpack.
If I get in a crash and I need more coverage, that's the bank of money I'm going to tip into, right?
Yeah.
And so what it really does is it helps me when that other driver's minimum liability coverage that they paid for by law is just nowhere near enough to pay for what is going on with me, right?
No.
So they've hit me. I'm seriously injured. I take the ambulance ride, the ER, the surgery, the physical therapy, the lost wages.
Right.
You add up all the long-term impacts of this one moment in time, and I'm at a loss because I'm out all this potential dollars, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the uninsured motorist coverage comes in.
Well, I'll give you my example. I was hit head on my bicycle a few years ago. The woman took off. It was at dawn. I was training for a century. She took off, and I had no idea. So I rode 7 miles, bleeding out, hospital. Cut now, statute of limitations. I was lucky. It was a year later. I'm mountain biking, and a guy, we were talking. I told him what happened. He goes, "You got auto insurance?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "You got UM?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You're retired, right?" He goes, tell me you didn't cut it. So you know where I'm going with this. I said I did to save $7 a month.
Right.
I cut it for 100 to 50. He goes, well, let's go get you 50. This is
Right.
before I met Parnall Law.
Right.
My point is, I tell people now, it's $7 a month. That's a latte at a coffee shop.
And that's the irony, right? People don't understand that it's worth the $7, $10.
Yeah.
If it were $20 a month,
Still
you know,
worth
or
it.
more, it would
Still
be worth it.
Yeah.
And you know, it seems like, oh, I'm paying it and I'm not really using it. You need that protection. You need that security that you
Right.
take with you everywhere.
Right.
Because you know you can't buy it afterwards.
No, and I've learned, and that's a crucial. If there's one thing I want to impart to our listeners in this conversation is that is really important.
Well, and like in your example, it's a hit and run. So I've had many people that I know were victims of hit and run on their motorcycles.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, like here at Parnall Law, we have the benefit of this investigative team, like
Yes.
Rick and Tim
Yes.
and Carrie. We have found a remarkable number of hit and run drivers. We've done the work, right? And they go out and they track these people down.
Yeah.
But it is that uninsured motorist coverage that helps those drivers and riders and cyclists in those sort of incidents. And so if you don't have it, you're really doing yourself a disservice, right? I mean, I buy that to protect me,
That's
right?
great
I buy that
advice.
to protect my family.
Yeah.
And so you could literally go broke from an accident like this. It is not cheap to be a victim.
And especially with motorcycles. See, you know, my bike was worth, you know, probably $7,000. You know, it's an older road bike, but a motorcycle,
Right.
some cases you're talking tens of thousands of dollars. So
Yeah, honestly, most new larger motorcycles are over $20,000,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you know, like I talked earlier about some of the Royal Enfields, and those are, you know, $6,000 or $7,000. But that's what some of these young people are getting on and sort of making their, you know, experience on. And
Yeah.
it's an affordable way for them to get into the sport.
But it's $7,000
But
for a
man,
young
you
person.
need to pay the money, get that coverage.
Good.
you know?
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I want to come back to what you do in the community, man. How important is local to you? How important is local to Parnall Law?
Well, I think it's extremely important.
Okay.
I mean, I think most people, I say all the time, if people haven't been through a crash, they don't necessarily care what's up with all these lawyers, right? They see
Right.
the ads on TV
Right,
and it's
right,
like
yeah.
background chatter or whatever.
Yeah.
Until you get in that crash. And then you're like, oh my God, what do I do? Who do I call? And so, you know, the lawyer industry for personal injury is highly competitive and it's relatively lucrative. So
Right.
New Mexico has always sort of been not a primary market, right, for a lot of industries.
Yeah.
And it's just a factor of our population overall.
Yeah.
We're just a smaller state
Yeah.
in terms of our population. But what you find is that we have a lot of out-of-state competitors. They want to come in here because they've earned a lot of money in these bigger cities like Phoenix or Vegas or Dallas or Chicago, and they want to come in here and spend all their earnings to advertise to the local people here and
Right.
collect all that business. And so I think what you find is if you watch the television, very few of the ads are for local attorneys.
Yeah. And I also get the sense of, you know, you guys, if Parnall Law is here, you know the nuances of this area. You know everything that needs to happen in your case to develop this case.
Well, let me tell you. I mean, our staff is here. We
Right.
have, you know, the full 8th floor here at the City Place.
Yeah.
We have all of our case managers, legal assistants, paralegals, attorneys. Our investigators are here. They're retired state policemen or Bernalillo County sheriffs or whatever. And so when we look at an accident report, we intuitively understand where that is, what the circumstances are like. If you tell me you had a crash at Rio Grande and Central, I automatically know what's there.
Yeah.
I know the mechanics, and that is a bizarre intersection, by the way.
Sure
which
is, by the
why
way.
I
Yeah.
mention it.
Yeah.
But, you know, understanding the neighborhood, you know, how people drive here, understanding not only that, the rules, right? So if an out-of-state lawyer is trying to handle your case from Phoenix, from Vegas, from somewhere else, they don't really understand all the nuance to New Mexico rules and laws.
Yeah, you can look at Google Earth all you want, but if
Right.
you're not here, and again, our investigators, that's huge.
Right. I mean,
agree.
I mean, they're licensed through a reciprocity arrangement that the state bars have. But that doesn't mean you understand all the little nuance.
No.
And so you could potentially be doing it wrong, because certainly the defense understands these insurance adjusters and lawyers for the insurance. They understand intimately what they're doing, right? And it's their job. Look, I always say this too. We get frustrated because we pay all this money every month for our insurance premiums, right? And I just think, oh, my insurance company, they work for me, right? I've paid them. No, they work for themselves. Their job is to collect as much of those premiums as possible, pay as little out on the back end as possible, and share that profit to their shareholders, right?
Yeah, agreed.
And so that's what makes insurance a profitable company.
Right.
Well, honestly, if they would just do what they're supposed to do, lawyers wouldn't have a job, right? If they just paid like, oh, CJ was in a crash, he's injured, it was the other guy's fault, we're just going to cover that because we're supposed to.
Well, yeah, here's the segue then. How we talk about local, we talk about community, how important is it to you personally, the people at Parnall Law, that sense of we all live here. This is our community, man. We're looking for justice.
Well, it is
right here in
these are our neighbors, right? These are our friends and family.
Good.
And a lot. So we actually collect a high percentage of our business through referrals.
Yeah,
it comes from friends and family. It comes from former clients. It comes from people who know us in the community. Literal friends and neighbors. And so it is important, this local component, because Bert lives here in Albuquerque. All these lawyers live here in Albuquerque or in Santa Fe. Yeah. And so we sponsor all these events in our community. We're helping to fund the activities that people want to be able to go do on their recreation time, or we're funding all these charities that support local children or local needy folks, or there's like a litany of things that we contribute to.
Animal humane.
Well, that's
huge
a great
opportunity.
Yeah.
So okay.
And so for us, it's not just stroking a check and having a fancy commercial or whatever. Like we're invested in this community and in this state, and so I ride all over this state. We travel all over this state. Bert loves to camp. He was just in somewhere BFE, New Mexico, camping.
Let's talk about that just real quick, and then I want to ask you kind of a continuation of this community thought. This state is huge. What is it, fifth landmass?
I think it is fifth, yeah.
With only 2 million people.
Yeah, it's one of the smaller by population.
Parnall Law, I've heard, and tell me a little bit more, you guys cover almost from corner to corner to corner, you know what I mean? And you're still...
We work in all of New Mexico.
Yeah, and very few of these other firms that come into our market are not in every corner.
I say like they're hitting the wave tops, right? Like
we
have an office in Phoenix. We have an office in Albuquerque. We have an office in Amarillo or Dallas. It's like, great, you're marching your way across the country, but like, we have an office in Rio Rancho. We have an office in Roswell. We have an office in Santa Fe. Like we're going deep, right?
Yeah,
we're in the community here.
Yeah.
And so, and part of the reason is like, this is where we're from. I mean, like Bert's wife went to school in Roswell.
Yeah.
Our operations manager is from Roswell.
Roswell, right.
Yeah. And so like, I live in Bernalillo. I have attorneys that live right up the road in Rio Rancho. Like we have part of our team lives in Santa Fe. And
that's
like,
great.
Rick was the chief of police in Taos. Like, we're invested in New Mexico. Like we're not,
So let me ask the question. What's your earliest, I asked this of Bert Parnall, I'll ask you as well. What's your earliest memory of Albuquerque as a kid when you moved here? What was the earliest memory, or what did you think of this place?
Well, when I first moved here, it was unusual because it's 1984. I'm like 14 years old.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a freshman at St. Pius, which used to be right across the street here where Uptown is now.
Right.
And I'm from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Everything there is green, and it's a different sort of history, right? I grew up, everything was colonial, right? So I grew up on Fayette Street, and I went to Valley Forge, and we were at the Liberty Bell for the bicentennial, and, everything's very brick colonial, And I come here, and everything's brown. I mean, everything was brown. And I think there was a drought that year or something. Like, the trees looked like garbage, everything. Yeah. And back then, the cottonwoods would actually, like, throw all the cotton.
Yeah.
It was just like snow in the summertime, Yeah. And I'll never forget, the first thing that really struck me was they used to have this commercial on TV about the ditch, right? The ditch witch.
Oh, right.
Stay out of the ditches, the arroyos. And I was like,
Yeah.
what is an arroyo? Like, I don't even know what that is.
That's so ironic.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, and I saw these ditches and I was like, well, why didn't they put that like a pipe underground? You know, that's what we would do in a city, right? And somebody would say, oh, well, you know, if it rains on the mountain, it might be dry here, but you're going to get sweat. And I was like, what? And then sure enough, it happened. Like you'd see, remember that one that goes by I-40 in Carlisle?
Yeah.
Somebody was always getting, you know, swept away.
Well, it's ironic you said that because my son, growing up in Santa Fe, he was taking skateboard lessons. He was talking to the owner, and he said, well, you know, my daughter's the state champion for longboarding. And I said, where do you do that? He goes, in the ditches down in Albuquerque, 55 miles an hour. And I was like, so that must have been a trip for you.
That's not dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, you're coming from Pennsylvania, and you're like, huh?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, yeah, we would see surfboards at the beach, but it never occurred to me to do it in an arroyo.
So I got to ask, man, where do you find your inspiration every day? What makes CJ get up and want to come into work, do these events? Because I know you're basically, sometimes you're on a seven-day work week.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Where are you finding your inspiration, man?
Honestly, I have a really good time with this. You know, I mean, I've had plenty of other jobs in my career, and some of them are more fulfilling than others.
Yeah.
But, you know, the beauty here is I get to see a lot of this firsthand of how we're helping people.
Right.
And, you know, I've been fortunate enough that because of the relationships I've developed in New Mexico with motorcyclists and others, I've been able to, you know, bring people in as clients that we've really, really been able to help. And, you know, for example, we had a conversation just today about someone else's cases that literal multi-million-dollar settlements, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people see like these numbers on a billboard or a number on a television, and they're like, oh, millions of dollars. And it's like, okay, well, what do people think? And what I think is like, look, that number is symbolic of the justice we were able to get for these clients, right? These people were really hurt. These people, their lives are changed by these injuries or in some cases fatalities. And so, you know,
dramatic.
How can we help them get through this in the best way possible? You know, I mean, ultimately, if they could get back to this sort of condition they were in the day before the crash, that would be great. But in many cases, that's impossible. They have amputations. There's fatalities. There's other components.
Yes.
So these dollars represent the justice that we get for these victims, right?
Very good.
And so, you know, I don't sort of want to poo-poo all the advertising, but I do think that it's a good feeling when you're able to help those people.
And doesn't it come back to community, to local?
Well, that's the deal,
These are
right?
our friends and neighbors and relatives.
Exactly.
I know, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
and that's the thing too, right? And there's another reason, the whole local thing. I mean, like, if you hire a firm that is local, those dollars stay here. I mean, these employees are here.
Yeah,
they're
isn't
being
that true?
paid
Isn't that
by
true?
Bert to work here. You know, they shop in your grocery
Yes,
store.
yes.
Their kid goes to your kid's school.
Yeah.
You know, we're all in this together. And so, you know, we need to make New Mexico better.
I agree. That's great, man.
Yeah.
So what's the number one challenge? Now, this is a tough one, but I think you got it, man. What's the number one challenge facing Albuquerque today? What do you think is our biggest? You know, you hear we're right in the middle of election seasons and everyone's talking, but, you know, I asked the same thing of Bert, and I'm curious, man.
Well, it's funny. I watched that episode, and I don't remember what Bert said, but you know, in my previous career, I was a security manager.
Right.
And it's very hard for me to see Albuquerque in the shape that it's in because in the 90s, when I did security at some really sketchy places on Central Avenue, and, you know, they were trying to use code enforcement to clean up Central and really make it worthy of the tourism that they wanted to lure in here. And, you know, and from that time to now, it's really diminished. And so between homelessness, crime, drugs, you know, and there's a lot of theories of how to solve these problems, and I don't necessarily have the magic bullet answer.
I agree.
But it's very disappointing. And so for me, the major concern is, you know, Albuquerque walks around with a giant black eye because nobody wants to come here and bring their convention here or do tourism here because it's not safe and their car's going to get broken into. And we had Arena Cross here a while back, and some guys' trailers got stolen. Their race bikes are just gone.
Oh, my God.
And so it's like, and that happens every single time. Right? Every single time.
Yeah.
So that's just an example where this town needs to get it together.
Yeah. No, that's really well put. And I think, it comes back to, again, let's see what we can do with our community, with our locals, what we can do.
Well, look, we invest in the community. We go out and support all these efforts. I mean, we're supporting people that are riding or doing car shows or doing charity events or whatever.
And MAD, which is huge.
Yeah, MAD. We go out with the police officers. We bring food and drinks to the officers out on the checkpoint. Good. They're there for hours trying to enforce the law and stop drunk driving. And we go out and bring them some lunch. And
they're our neighbors and friends.
Exactly.
Well put.
So, we like to support, those kind of efforts that make the community better.
Makes you think. So I have to ask, man, this is always my favorite. If you weren't doing this at Parnall Law, what would CJ be doing with himself? What would you be doing with yourself? Does it involve motorcycles?
Well, it absolutely does. Yeah. Honestly, I've been trying to figure out for years how I can afford to just ride my motorcycle around the world indefinitely.
There's a lot of
honestly, there's a lot of places I'd like to go, a lot of things I'd like to see, and weirdly, my wife is not interested in riding along with me like that, but I think she might fly in and meet me a few times.
there you go, dude. That's kind of nice.
Yeah,
it's kind of like checking, like SAG. She could be there to kind of check in as you're going. So
just
really
keep
cool.
me grounded. So
hey, well, CJ Rodden, thank you very much, man. This has been a pleasure. Thanks. I think some really good insights on motorcycle, but also just on the community in general. And I think one message that sticks with me is, man, go with UM and take the maximum cover possible.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you very much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks,
Take
Chris.
care of yourself. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Cool.